Sorry, I have one other one, because this $2,500, it's just this wastewater treatment plant. And I don't know what it pertains to.
I bet that's water and sewer. Next slide. I think that's probably water and sewer. Yeah, John might have. That's like this. I recognize it.
On the bills to get this wastewater treatment plant, 2533. Usually there's some explanation. Just has a series here without. We have a count number, but no explanation.
Wonder. I saw your email. I'm sorry.
Me? Yeah. I was just like, you got, I think you should be kind of. And he did.
So she's here. Wonder if she's here next.
Excellent.
Carmen, are you able to hear okay?
Yeah, 1711. Yeah.
She said
Straight didn't show up in the market.
Yeah, I'm not
Excel
sure.
Ms. Bauman, are you able to hear okay?
Yes, hi.
All right, we haven't quite started yet, but we'll get going here in a few.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's what you want right before a good meeting.
I know.
It's like a game we play with ourselves.
Yeah.
Where's the button?
You never quite know what to do.
Ms. Bauman, are you planning on sharing your screen for our presentation?
I was actually just putting the chat out. So there's a few more people joining me, and Kyle's going to share his presentation. So it's,
Okay.
yeah, I'll put the names in the chat so you guys can promote them to panelists.
Sounds good.
Hey, John? Okay, you.
Hey, John.
Hey.
Done.
How you going?
Good, how are you?
Good.
That's what John figured it was.
I wasn't sure if it was.
Good stuff.
It was outside all weekend and then outside all day today.
Hi, Chuck.
Hey, how's it going?
You guys made great
Good, how you
progress.
doing?
Good.
We'll have it done like, wow.
It's good.
Hi, John.
Hey.
How's it going?
It's just weird it didn't populate with Excel. Usually it does.
Yeah.
And then it will say total amount to Excel.
We've got the CDPHE team is here.
Okay.
I think we might have one more person from CDPHE, two more coming.
No, Ab's gonna do it tonight. Ab's gonna do it tonight.
Final game tonight?
Well, game
Yeah.
4, they're up 3-0. I think they'll pull it out.
Have a faith, Jared.
I think
Final
they'll
game
do
tonight.
What time's the game tonight, John? Do you know?
I thought it was 7:30.
Oh.
No, they're wrong.
Okay.
So we'll just have to.
We'll have to have
We'll be
a.
done by 7:30, right?
It's not that big of an agenda. It looks like a pretty easy thing. You can make the game.
hard to watch these games if you don't have cable, you don't have satellite. There's, you know, and some don't carry that channel, and that just isn't right, you know.
You gotta think like.
And they're away, aren't they? For this game,
What's that?
are they away? I think they're.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Where?
In Nash Vegas.
Nash Vegas.
The Nashville or the Las Vegas?
Nashville's like a bunch of bugs, so they can't just be Nashville. They have to have something else.
Oh.
They're aspiring to be there.
Ouch. I think we have everybody here.
CDPHE, there's one more person joining us, correct?
There's one more from EPA, but I just sent her oh, she's actually in the waiting room right now. So, or sorry, the attendee section. Perfect.
No, Scott won't be here. Scott won't be here.
And Kyle, you're sharing your screen, right?
Yes, Scott did say he wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I have a presentation. I'll be sharing my screen as soon as we get going.
You should have no issue.
That's it.
I haven't heard from anybody else.
I think Kate was saying she wouldn't be here next week, but we're not having one. next
Right
week,
now,
so,
doesn't work.
Yeah. So.
I think Jamie's stuck in limbo.
Yeah.
Move over.
Dominican Republic. Are you kidding me? Either. Everybody's going away this month. How long are you gone for?
Do you think she clicked on the Zoom link for their meeting tomorrow?
She was in the she was in the attendees section, so she was in the right room.
Okay.
It's just not.
Go up on the panelist side. She moved over and now she's kind of in between.
No, it's not good.
If you're able to text her, do you want to, or email her or call her? Do you want to see if she can maybe try
Oh,
one more
from
time?
the record.
I think she got stuck.
Where did you live? Yeah, my brother would actually
Oh,
live
here we
there.
go.
Augustine now, but.
Oh, there,
I'll
okay,
leave it.
great.
Yeah, it's nice, but it's still Florida, sorry.
I think that's everyone from the visitor side.
Yeah, well, good. I want to welcome everybody to the May 9th, 2022 Idaho Springs City Council work session. Usually we start pretty close to on time. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes.
Can we text Lisa, see what's going on?
Yeah, there's at least 3 council members who would normally be here.
Who takes the cat camping? I'll text Jim too.
Oh, thank you.
I don't have Art's information in here yet, unfortunately. Although you guys did send it to me, it's my bad.
Hey, Andy,
Yes.
how many, you all are so little on my little screen. How many counselors are there?
3.
Okay. Just thinking ahead, if we do have issues getting a quorum, that does not prohibit you 3 who are there from still receiving information in this study session. The quorum requirement of 4 or more is there, excuse me, for you to be able to take formal action, which you are not doing at all here in this study session. You're just receiving information. Not that that's not important, but I mean, just receiving information. You're not scheduled to vote here until we roll up on 7 o'clock, Mayor. So if you would like to still proceed, and we have these fine folks here ready to give you 3 information. I know we're live streaming as well. You certainly can proceed with that, even if we get to a point here where you think that the 3 of the folks we have now might be who you have for a while. Okay.
Yeah, Carmen, that's a good idea. You know, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So the first thing on our agenda is the overview of the Central City Clerk Creek Superfund site. And welcome, glad to have you.
Thank you. Well, great. Thank you so much for having us. I'll just kind of kick us off a little bit, and then Kyle will take over and he'll give you guys kind of the rundown of what we're talking about today. But we have a new operable unit that we're opening up in the Clear Creek Superfund site, and it has to do with residential mine waste piles. So I'll just leave it at that, and I'll do a little introduction for us. So Kyle Sanders, the remedial project manager for the state working on this site. Jamie Miller is with the Environmental Protection Agency, and she's also a remedial project manager. And then we have Mary Boardman on the call as well. She's our Superfund unit leader, and she's supervising Kyle on this site. And then I'm the community involvement specialist for the state. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kyle.
Excellent. Thanks for that intro, Shannon. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you guys can see my presentation. And are you guys seeing that now?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that intro, Shannon, and thanks for taking a moment of your meeting to let me talk about the new operable unit that we're starting within the Central City Clear Creek Superfund site. Kind of before I get into the larger presentation, I'm just going to go over a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. Let me just move your guys' picture out of my way so I can see my presentation. Okay. So to kick off, I'm just going to be showing you a couple maps that show the site study area, and then I'm going to be talking about briefly the cleanup decisions and activities that have taken place at the site over the last 40 or so years. And then we're going to be getting into what the new operable unit is and kind of some of the activities around the new operable unit, one of which is the remedial investigation and feasibility study that we're in the process of kicking off currently. And then I'll just go into a little bit of question and answer, and that's just more of me posing some questions about the site and answering them. And then we'll touch a little bit on liability, and then also a little bit on the potential risk to human health posed by these residential waste piles, and then kind of wrapping it up with some community involvement and how to get further involved as we move forward with our investigation. And so, as I mentioned, we're just going to be showing some quick slides that show this study area. The site has been listed on the national priorities list since 1983. And this larger extent that you're seeing in this slide and in this next slide that I'm about to bring up, the study area boundary of the site has been in effect since the late 80s. And as you can see in this slide, the 400 square mile study area encompasses a large portion of I-70, both north and south, from about the Golden area all the way up through Georgetown into the Eisenhower Tunnel. And as you can see here on the northern section, it also encompasses some historic mine features. Just to call out a few, we have the Gregory Incline, the Quartz Hill Tunnel, the National Tunnel, and a few other tunnels that were associated with the original Superfund listing. So to go over the cleanup decisions that have been made at the site over time. Originally in 1987, the first rod was implemented to address the discharge from 5 mine tunnels, and those were the Gregory Incline, the National, the Argo, the Big 5, and the Quartz Hill Tunnel. Later in 1988, the OU2 rod was implemented to address the tailings and waste rock from those 5 original mine tunnels. And Slightly in the future, in 1991, we implemented the OU3 rod, which essentially expanded the work covered by the first two records of decision to include additional mine discharges and additional mine waste piles that were identified subsequent to the 1987 record of decision. Slightly further in history, we implemented the OU4 record decision, and that was mainly implemented to address the mine discharges and waste to improve water quality in the North Clear Creek area. So kind of going up over some of the cleanup activities that we've conducted since the late 80s. We've constructed 2 water treatment plants, both the Argo and the North Clear Creek water treatment plant. There's been a series of waste rock stabilization, capping, removal, and diversion run-on water efforts, as well as habitat restoration, sediment reduction, and channel stability improvements. We've built a site-wide repository that we call the Church Placer Waste Rock Repository, and we've also installed a flow-through control bulkhead at the Argo Tunnel. And that's not a comprehensive list of cleanup activities, but just some examples of what work has been conducted at the site historically. And one thing I do want to point out is that the efforts that have taken place in terms of cleanup at the site have largely been to address water quality impacts in both the Clear Creek and the North Clear Creek basins. And so this slide just shows some of those cleanup and remedies that we've implemented. Starting in the top left, we have the Quartz Hill cap. Top right, on the right-hand side of that photo is our Church Placer Waste Rock Repository. Wide repository. Bottom left is the newly constructed North Clear Creek water treatment plant. And bottom right is that flow-through control bulkhead at the Argo Tunnel that I had mentioned. So that was some site history, but now we're gonna kind of be getting into the main focus of this presentation in this meeting today, and that's talking about the new Operable Unit 5 within the site. And the purpose of this Operable Unit is to investigate mine waste piles in current residential areas of the study area for unacceptable risk to human health, and to develop a risk-based cleanup approach that incorporates both on-the-ground cleanup and implementation of institutional controls. And the reason for this expanded investigation in the new Operable Unit was based on some recent assessments of mine waste piles that were conducted by CDPHE and EPA in 2015 and 2018. And the results of those sampling efforts indicated that potentially concerning levels of heavy metals were present within these residential waste piles. And so currently, the agencies are prioritizing the evaluations of waste piles that pose the greatest risk to human health for initial sampling as part of our remedial investigation feasibility study. We are focusing on criteria like proximity to waste piles, but we're also taking other criteria into consideration as we prioritize the piles for sampling. And so getting a little bit more into what a remedial investigation feasibility study entails, CDPHE hired a consultant, CDM Smith, to conduct the RIFS. The RI is essentially just the data collection and characterization phase of the project. It's where we actually go out and collect samples and other data that's necessary to fully characterize the extent of the problem within the site. And the FS, or the feasibility study, is the process by which we develop, screen, and evaluate the remedial action alternatives or cleanup options for the operable unit. In this case, we're also going to be performing what's called a human health risk assessment. And that's essentially a study that will allow us to develop site-specific cleanup goals for the future remedial work. So in this slide, I'm just going to essentially be posing some questions and answering them as well. So the first question is, what work is planned? And so the work that we're currently doing with CDM Smith, I touched on a little bit, but it is a identification and prioritization of waste piles for our initial sampling effort. Right now, we're targeting a sampling 100 piles or 100 groups of piles for our initial sampling effort. And just to give you a little bit of context, our consultant right now has over 500 piles or groups of piles identified purely through identification with aerial imagery. And so we're working on narrowing that 500 down to 100 of the most likely piles to have impacts to human health. So as we go through that prioritization effort, we're also working on gathering ownership data for those potential piles that we want to sample. And so part of our prioritization effort will also be an effort to reach out to property owners for access to those 100 piles or groups of piles that we want to sample, with the ultimate goal of being out in the field collecting data late summer, early fall of this year. And so how long will this take? The short answer is multiple years. Right now, we're targeting finishing the RIFS process in late 2024. And after the RIFS process, we would move into what's called our RDRA, or Remedial Design and Remedial Action, which is more of the extensive cleanup that would be undertaken after our investigation and characterization of the site. And that's planned to take potentially several more years after that 2024 date. So kind of short answer is multiple years to undergo from initial investigation steps to final cleanup. And so what properties and waste piles will be sampled? I did just kind of touch on that, our prioritization effort that we're currently undergoing. But one of the points that we also are trying to make is if there is a pile that's known to a community to be of concern, to bring those to our attention now, so we can relay that to our consultant and potentially take look at those piles with a slightly more scrutiny. And lastly, will the community have an opportunity to provide input? And the answer to that is yes. There are several stages in the Superfund or CERCLA process that actually require community input and comment. And so as we get to those stages of the project, our community involvement folks, Shannon being one of them, will be working to make sure that the local stakeholders and everyone that would have the opportunity to provide comment during that period has the opportunity to. And so now I want to touch a little bit on liability with regards to Superfund and CERCLA. And so CERCLA liability is three things. It's retroactive, joint and several, and strict. And by that we mean, so retroactive means that any so parties may be held liable for acts that happened prior to the 1980 enactment of CERCLA. And so essentially it just means if you did contaminate, or if you contaminated a site prior to 1980, you do have liability for that, even though it happened prior to the act being formalized. Joint and several means that any one potentially responsible party may be held liable for the entire cleanup of a site. And lastly, strict means a PRP or potentially responsible party can't simply say they were negligent or they were following industry standards at the time that the contamination impacted the site. That's not a that does not protect them from the liability that they have under CERCLA. All that being said, one thing that we're trying to make people aware of is that EPA does have a policy regarding enforcement discretion for residential property owners. And I'm going to have some text come up here, and I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to kind of give you the gist of it. Essentially, the gist of this enforcement discretion says that as long as a property owner isn't doing anything to the contamination on their property to make the environmental condition worse. So in the case of our residential waste piles, if they're not, digging into it or performing some sort of mining operation or anything like that, then we're not going to enforce upon them for any sort of cleanup. We're not looking to go after private property owners for cleanup of these residential piles if they just happen to be living next to them. It's only in cases where they know about the issue and are exacerbating that known environmental condition where they potentially would fall under CERCLA liability. And so one of the things that we also wanted to let folks know of is that non-residential property owners may pursue liability protections if they meet certain pre and post purchase requirements. And CDPHE and EPA are encouraging both private developers, the residential developers, and commercial developers to reach out to CDPHE and EPA if they're pursuing a project that has the potential to impact these residential mine waste piles as we move forward with our investigation. And that has to do with some of that pre and post requirements that I spoke about too in that previous bullet. Essentially what we're hoping to do is work with folks through a process which we are in right now establishing and in the process of streamlining to help conduct that potential development work in a way that's both safe for themselves, their workers, and nearby residents, but also gives them a level of liability protection under CERCLA. And so one of the things that we wanted to bring to people's attention is some of the potential risks associated with the metals that have been identified in these residential mine waste piles. And two metals in particular that we saw in elevated concentrations in our initial sampling effort were lead and arsenic. With lead, it can cause high blood pressure in adults, kidney problems, delays in children's physical or mental development, as well as lower birth weights in infants. Lead poisoning can happen slowly or quickly, and those impacts can be long lasting and sometimes difficult to see. And with regards to arsenic, continually eating food with that's been contaminated with inorganic arsenic, it can lead to an increase of cancer for the skin, liver, bladder, and lungs. And additionally, it can impact organ systems, including the skin, digestive system, liver, nervous system, and the respiratory. So these next few slides are here to highlight what some of these piles could potentially look like. In this first slide, the pile is a little unassuming. It's right in the center of the photograph. And one of the telltale signs that you can see on the top here is a slight discoloration of the lighter material as compared to the darker brown you can see just to the left in the foreground. This next picture here shows a slightly different pile. This one is a little bit more obvious. It's actually a group of piles, but you don't see the discolorization that's sometimes associated with the mine waste. But here you can just see an obvious impact from historic mining with these large mine waste piles in the center of the photograph. And this last picture here kind of marries the two photos. You see the large waste piles along with that kind of classic discolorization associated with the historic mine waste piles. So now that we've talked about some of the risks associated with these piles and kind of how to identify, we wanted just to leave you with some quick healthy home best practices that you can follow if you're operating in and around these mine waste piles. One thing is to regularly wash your hands. Also try to keep dirt outside to the best of your ability. That would include wiping your shoes off on a doormat or just leaving them outside. If you have children, creating a safe space for them to play that doesn't involve contact with bare soil or mine waste. And then garden safely, using raised beds, wearing gloves, and washing those veggies before bringing them in to eat with your dinner. So another thing that we wanted to also bring to the community's awareness is blood lead testing. As we let more folks know about the potential risks associated with these piles, we specifically encourage young children to be tested if there is a concern from their parent or physician. Specifically, kids aged 1 to 6 years old, they seem to be the most acceptable to the impacts from lead at that early age. So one of the ways that you can get tested is by contacting your physician and working with them. But the other way, which we are currently coordinating with Clear Creek Public Health on, is to get free blood lead testing through them. CDPHE has ordered the blood lead testing strips to provide the health agency, and they should be getting those within the next couple of weeks if they haven't already. We have a email list that we're asking folks to sign up for, and so that'll be one way that we'll be getting the message out when that blood lead testing is available. So getting a little bit into community involvement, CDPHE community involvement staff has been coordinating informational sessions and public meetings. This is one of them with local stakeholder groups. We've been doing that starting in April and have been have meetings scheduled through May. We've also developed a fact sheet that provides some initial information for the new OU and highlights some of the potential risks associated with the mine waste piles. And I believe that Shannon shared that fact sheet with you all prior to us joining the session today. And one of the things that we're also considering putting together is a fact sheet that focuses on information for potential development on or near the mine waste piles within the study area. We were trying to gauge interest in a fact sheet like that, and it sounds like from most of the folks that we've talked to that there is interest in that fact sheet, so that's something that we're going to be working on here in the near And so, as I mentioned, we do have a site mailing list, and to get on that, you can email Shannon Bauman. She will make sure that you're on the list and up to date with any new news with the site. One of the things that we're also working on doing is updating the CDPHE community involvement plan. And part of that will involve conducting interviews, and we're planning on doing that later this year, probably targeting like the same time frame as our sampling, late summer or fall. And if you're looking for any additional information about the site, both CDPHE and EPA have site websites that you can access, and the links to those are in this slide here. And that is all I have. I will stop sharing my screen and open the floor up to questions. You can just shout them out. I can't really see you guys all that well.
Are you gonna give this presentation to Upper Clear Creek Watershed Association?
I don't know if we're on it, on their agenda to give it, but that's something that we certainly can do.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, and one of the things that I should highlight is historically the work that has been done within the site has been done to address those water quality issues. The work that we're planning for OU5 is more specifically to address the human health risks posed by these piles, and less so the ecological impact posed by them.
Kyle, where are most of the projects that you're talking about, or the homes that you're talking about, the properties that you're talking about?
We're looking at properties that are within that whole 400 square mile study area that are close to residential mine piles, where that's kind of our first line of prioritization, is how close either a home or like a daycare or a school are to the piles. And then we have several other tiering criteria that we're looking at as well.
Do you already have a list of the properties that you're going to go down and like sort of that are prioritized at this point?
So our consultant is currently working on that. Like I mentioned, they've identified over 500 piles or groups of piles, and they're going through that kind of tiering process right now. We haven't finalized anything we haven't finalized the list, but I anticipate getting a draft soon to review.
Would you keep us posted on that so that we can be encouraging the residents so that they don't push back on you guys wanting to come in and do those?
Yeah, so that is certainly one of our concerns. When we did our 2018 sampling event, we reached out to over 50 residents and got about a 50% return for access. So I don't know if that's going to correlate once we kind of go to scale, but yeah, that is one of our concerns, is that getting access to the properties that we are interested in may be difficult due to a number of reasons, pushback, or it being a second residence and actually getting in contact with the appropriate property owner. And so luckily that's a hurdle that our consultant has to tackle, but it's something that we definitely have in the back of our mind.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Kyle? Well, Kyle, thank you very much. We appreciate you keeping us up to date, and we look forward to hearing more about this.
Yeah, we don't have a lot to share right now. We're in the very early stages of this project, but as we move forward, we'll definitely be keeping you guys as up to date as possible. So yeah, I definitely appreciate your time, and if you have any other questions that come up after I hop off the call, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll try to get you an answer as soon as possible.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, next on our list is CDOT Floyd Hill project update.
All right, well, I want to first say thank you, Mayor Harmon, and the
City Council for inviting us here today to share an update on the Floyd Hill project. I'm Kurt Kianka. I'm the Floyd Hill Project Director with CDOT. And today I brought two of our key project personnel with me for support. I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Nancy Wharton with Peak Consulting Group, and I'm an environmental consultant manager.
And I'm Anthony Pisano with Atkins, and I'm the design project manager for consultant design project manager.
So on the agenda for today's meeting, I'm going to do a quick overview of the project, look at the project limits, and also the benefits that the project has. Mandy's going to share an update on the context-sensitive solutions process for the project. Anthony's going to walk through the EA preferred alternative, and then I'll share a quick project status as well as a funding update, and then next steps and where we're going from here. So what you see on the screen here is the project limits. The western project limits for the project start at I-70 milepost 241, which is the eastern exit for Idaho Springs, Colorado Boulevard. And the eastern project limits are at the top of Floyd Hill at milepost 248, which is the Beaver Brook Floyd Hill exit. In addition to the work that's going on within these project limits, we have several early projects that will be starting, which include wildlife crossings at Genesee and at Empire, and roundabouts at County Road 65 and also Homestead. Okay, project overview. Some of the major project features, and I guess I should start with our EA that was signed last July had two different alternatives in it that remained. One was a tunnel option, and then one was the canyon viaduct, which was identified as a preferred alternative. And so that is the alternative that we are moving forward with right now. We are not looking at the tunnel alternative. So the major features that I'm going to go over with you right now are strictly for the canyon viaduct alternative, which is the preferred alternative. The main project features are adding that additional third lane to I-70 from the top of Floyd Hill, and then making that connection into the recently completed Mountain Express lane. It's going to replace the two very deficient bridges at the bottom of Floyd Hill. And then we're looking at doing safety improvements, which include flattening of the curves, increasing the sight distance, increasing the design speed to 55 miles an hour throughout this stretch of I-70. In addition, we're looking at doing interchange and intersection improvements throughout this stretch of I-70. Greenway improvements, which include reconstructing the multi-use trail on the south side of Clear Creek. Another key one is adding that frontage road connection from Central City Parkway to the US 6 interchanges. The early projects that I spoke of are going to add wildlife safety mitigation improvements, so those wildlife crossings, and then also additional wildlife fence, which should reduce the conflicts with wildlife. And then one more thing to note is the project will add an eastbound climbing lane from the bottom of Floyd Hill to the top of Floyd Hill for trucks and other slow moving vehicles. So what are the benefits of the project? You know, we're really talking about the safety improvements that we will see from the project, from bringing a lot of things up to current standard, flattening those curves, getting the sight distance through there, you know, and reducing the congestion on the adjacent local transportation system. You know, adding that right now, in looking at the figure on the bottom of the screen there, that really shows what's going on here. Floyd Hill is a bottleneck. You know, you have 3 lanes coming into it, and then at the top of Floyd Hill, traffic backs up at peak times. And then now with the recently completed Mountain Express lanes, you have that additional capacity on the other side as well. And so by completing this connection for the westbound lane, it's going to alleviate traffic on the adjacent local transportation system in the frontage roads. And of course, it replaces the two bridges at the bottom of Floyd Hill, which I think everybody in this room knows is an issue. Just recently, a couple months ago, we had a 24-hour lane closure to replace a rather large section of bridge deck that opened up on that. And I know that's happened several times in the last few years. Also the ties into the Mountain Express lane will reduce that bottleneck and really provide that continuous capacity all the way up to the US 40 exit. And the wildlife crossings will, in the wildlife fence will reduce animal and vehicle collisions. And from what we're seeing, you know, this project will reduce travel time by over an hour during those peak times of congestion. With that, I'll turn it over to Mandy for an update on our CSS process.
Yes, so a lot of you are familiar, Andy's certainly an expert at this process, having been through just on this project more than 70 meetings. We'll definitely get to 100 before it's all over. But we follow this process on all of the projects in the mountain corridor. So everything in the Idaho Springs area follows a formalized process that CDOT agreed to as part of the programmatic environmental impact statement back in 2011. So it involves a number of different teams. So there's a project leadership team, which Idaho Springs participates in. Andy's the representative to the project leadership team. That's a smaller group that really guides the project, more kind of a management group. And then there's a technical team, which involves multidisciplinary, you know, trucking interests, environmental interests, the local jurisdictions, recreation, wildlife, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. So basically a lot of different user groups that rely on the I-70 corridor to be functional. And so then we also have, as a subset of that, some issue task forces. So things where we've got a really particular issue, either geographic or subject related, where we get a smaller group of people together to really dive into the details on that. So we've been following this process and we've been working on this since 2017. Came up with what Kurt referred to as, we have the preferred alternative that's in the EA right now, the Canyon Viaduct alternative. So there's a lot of things that we've considered moving into this process. And then as we move out into the next phase, you know, we're really looking at a lot of, not just the project design, but a lot of the construction impacts. And so that was one of the things that when CDOT brought on the construction manager, which is Kramer, I think Kurt's going to get into that, they really will offer expertise on one of our big issues, is we probably have a 5-year construction period, which is going to be really impactful. I think fortunately Idaho Springs has suffered some of the worst of the construction fatigue over the construction of the peak period shoulders. And this one, again, is kind of at the east end of town. So it's, I think some of the direct things are going to be less impactful to Idaho Springs, but it's certainly a concern to all of the people who are, you know, here locally. So we're looking at ways to really minimize those impacts through the process. And so having all of those groups represented, so having the rafting community tell us, you know, this is what we need for keeping our operations going, having the business input, all of those are things that the CSS process really brings together in a pretty successful way. So we feel really good about the project, the progress that we've made to date on that, and we feel really good about the process we have going forward. It is sort of a unique process. Again, you know, Andy's really familiar with it. Jonathan's on the tech team and, you know, newer to the process, but we're all, you know, working together pretty seamlessly. And I think it's, you know, it's working pretty well. So if there's any questions about that, we can get into, you know, to more of that, but I won't let you go through the details of the project itself.
Thanks. So the first piece up here on the screen is a view of what we're calling the east section, which is basically the part that comes down the hill. So we'll add a third lane in the westbound direction, as Kurt mentioned, and then another lane up the hill in the eastbound direction. So it's a total of 2 lanes. And all of the widening will be along the eastbound lane. So will hold the existing westbound edge of pavement. This slope is very steep. We don't want to construct a bunch of walls and move into the hillside with that. There's some open areas, some areas will have some cut, but basically shift the barrier into the hill. So it's mostly mill and overlay as you come down, remove some pavement, correct some curves, add some pavement, and then some widening along the eastbound side. But it's basically more or less kind of on its existing alignment through this area. Here mentioned some wildlife fencing. So at the very top of the hill, they'll have fencing from Homestead all the way back to Soda Creek to prevent the wildlife from getting into I-70 and to funnel them to Soda Creek as a wildlife crossing of sorts.
That's Soda Creek in Jefferson County, right?
Yeah.
We have Soda Creek Road right here.
Oh, do you? Okay, no, sorry.
Two Soda Creeks, yeah.
Yeah, towards Genesee, push them that way, and there's already a crossing there, dirt road, and there's no real traffic on it, so that'll work. But then, here's come down, yeah, then you can see there'll be a new off ramp. Maybe, Kurt, we can go to the next slide. So this is what we're calling here the central section where we're off alignment, and both eastbound and westbound will be at least in part on bridges through here. You can see, kind of see the frontage road, US 6 extends under those bridges, and then there's a new ramp on from US 6 to westbound I-70 here. It will be on the right side of the traditional ramp. Right now they're on the left, which is non-traditional, and then replace the bridge at the bottom here, the ramp bridge. And that's the other one that's deficient. I mean, we're replacing all the bridges, but the two bad ones were the westbound direction of I-70 and the off-ramp bridge there towards Two Bears. Then you can see the climbing lane for in the eastbound direction coming from underneath the bridge. And as we go further west, we'll come across the creek and stay elevated. And this is the current concept. We'll cut the corner and part to flatten the curves. The curvature of the canyon is not suitable to meeting the 55-mile-an-hour design speed. So we need something that's flatter and a little more gentle. So it'll go through, but you can see the frontage road going through there. We didn't really get a chance to cover up all the old road on there. This was a video played quicker before you wouldn't see it, but here's a still picture that does show up. And also the greenway in this area, you can also kind of see goes across. There's a steep piece there that doesn't meet ADA, so we were going to bring it on the other side of the creek and then back just to get around that section there. And then next one, as we get closer to the Hidden Valley interchange, basically come in and tie into the existing, and then you can see the frontage road here on the bottom will tie into County Road 314, where it ties into Central City Parkway today. So now, and I looked this up on the map the other day, the parallel road network, you can go all the way from Genesee to Georgetown, and it's not all US 6 or 40, but this is the one piece that's missing. So now you'll be able to go all the way through, I think. And then as we get to the last section here, we'll definitely have to flatten some curves on the other side of Hidden Valley interchange with Central City Parkway, because those are really substandard. Potential for some creek impacts. We show relocating portions of County Road 314, at least here in the preferred alternative. And then once we get through the tunnels to the other side, it's really just going to be restriping from the tunnels to exit 241. There'll be a weave lane where if you're in this third lane, the express lane, you can get into a lane and then merge and go to Idaho Springs. Or if you want to get into the Peak Prairie Trail lane or the Mountain Express lane, you can get into that and then merge into the Mountain Express lane. But there's no real construction on the other side of the tunnel other than restriping.
Well, and there also is a potential noise wall.
Oh, man.
Right at the, just to the, pretty much right at exit 241.
Where the new pet bridge is, right?
Potential, what is the potential?
So it, the way that CDOT and federal highways determine whether they call it feasible and reasonable. So there are there's a number of residents in that area that are impacted by highway noise that's higher than the noise abatement criteria. So they would qualify for noise abatement if it's considered feasible and reasonable. And so that is really a matter of how many people are benefited by the cost. So that came back as a positive, you know, that the cost benefit was positive for that. But then there's another step, which is that the benefited receptors is what they're called, but the people who would benefit from the noise reduction basically vote on whether they want a wall or don't want a wall.
So out of curiosity, there's been other projects obviously through Clear Creek County and Idaho Springs specifically where that wall wasn't built.
Yeah.
Though I know now that there's probably people that would want it. So why didn't that particular section get it if this one's up for grabs? Because there's far more people living in that part of the town.
Yeah, so it has to do with the type of project. So there's a, this one is, because it's adding capacity and it's a permanent project, is called a type 1 project. So it's one where you would do the noise analysis. So if you have a project like the peak period shoulders is considered an operational improvement. So the existing highway does have, almost everybody who lives along the existing highway is above the noise abatement criteria, but because the construction doesn't trigger a new change to the highway, it's not retroactive. But because this one, we're triggering a new change because we're creating a permanent project that has the 3 lanes and the tie-in is right at 241. That's why that area was evaluated.
Gotcha. What's the probability that they'll get that down there?
It's 100% if they vote for it.
Okay, great.
So what happens is we'll have to send out a survey to the different residences, and it's a little complicated in some cases because the property owners and if there's tenants, there's different ways that you count the benefits. So the tenants, it's really the people who are living there get a vote, or the property owner. If as you have a property owner who owns multiple properties but they're not living there, yeah, it's just a little complicated the way that the process works. But basically, if the people who are living there want it, and we can make it work topographically if we think we can, then it's included in the project cost budget right now.
Great.
All right, thank you. All right, so quick current status update. I'll start with the contracts. Recently, we got contracts with our designer Atkins and also our contractor Kramer. Those might sound familiar. They are the ones that did the twin tunnels and were very successful at it. So we're very happy and very confident in our team moving forward. The big thing that we're looking at right now moving forward past preliminary design and moving into final design is what we're calling innovations. And we're looking at several innovations in the CSS process, specifically to the alignment. And so we're trying to look at different refinements that might provide additional benefits and minimize project impacts. And so in our last tech meeting, that was presented to the tech team members and kind of digesting that. And we're working over the next month to months to really finalize what we think is the preferred alignment through here. And then after that, we're really going to try and move towards getting our decision document done, which is the final step in the EA, you know, kind of that last step before we move into final design and ultimately construction. I know we're getting a little short on time, so we're trying to be quick here. Some of the construction phasing update. We're looking for package 1, which is the eastern section, which would be the top of Floyd Hill to roughly the bottom of Floyd Hill where the Canyon Viaduct would start. Right now, we have a pretty efficient schedule that we are looking to be in construction in spring of next year. Package 2 would be the western section from that tie-in at Hidden Valley all the way to where the end of the project at milepost 241 is. That we're looking for construction in the fall of 2023. And then package 3 is that big central section for that Canyon Viaduct in early 2024. Quick update here on the funding status. So for our EA preferred alternative, we have a cost estimate on that of roughly $700 million. That includes everything. So far, we've secured $460 million. We are committed to completing the entire project. And so we're really trying to address what we have as our funding gap, which you will see is currently $240 million. So how are we addressing that? So right now we have a notice of funding opportunity, a NOFO that was released in March for multimodal project discretionary grant. And so this one was kind of unique. There is 3 different opportunities in this grant, and it's mega, infra, and rural. And we can submit 1 application and we can go after all 3, which is great. We could receive funding from 1, 2, or all of them. And we feel that Floyd Hill is very competitive for this grant opportunity. It has a lot of unique traits, I think, that you don't see elsewhere in the country. And it is really a needed project. And I think our, benefit cost analysis in the grants is sitting really good. And so that being said, a successful grant opportunity could fully fund this project. So with that, next steps, we are going to submit our grant prior to the May 23rd deadline, which is fast approaching here. We're going to continue to analyze those refinement innovations through our CSS process and our tech team. We're going to proceed with final design of our package 1, which is that east section. And also we're going to work towards getting our NEPA decision document, which we are expecting in the fall of 2022. That open up for questions and comments. And the one thing that I do want to say is I do really appreciate the support and the participation in the commitments from Idaho Springs for the process.
How many lanes will be operable when the construction starts, both eastbound and westbound?
So we haven't fully determined that, but we know that we cannot take a lane. So there might be times where we have a lane closed overnight, something like that. But during peak times, we are keeping all the lanes open that is there currently.
Now, what's your anticipation? Once everything's in order, how many, I don't know how to raise it, what percent of traffic do you think will use the 3rd lane? And that starts, you say, at Floydville and goes all the way. Okay, what percent of traffic do you think will convert to that 3rd lane?
Yeah, I don't know if I know we have some traffic data on it.
Just roughly.
It's probably about, it's probably a little less than 1/3 because it's going to be an express lane, so it'll be free flow.
Right.
But it'll be, and then just maybe under 30%.
Okay, and you say there's going to be access from that 3rd lane. Someone's going to have to come from the 3rd lane, go across 2 lanes to get off at Idaho Springs.
Yeah, and the idea is that it's far enough back. Typically, you would want the egress to end 800 feet back from the exit per lane. So for 2 lanes, it needs to end 1,600 feet back. So a little over a quarter mile is 1,200. So it's a little more than that back. So you would have some time to get over.
So how long would that person from start to that point actually be using the 3rd lane? As far as mileage?
How far is the weave? I think there's another 1,000 or 1,200 feet of weave.
There's probably not that much of an incentive for someone headed to Idaho Springs to use the 3rd lane for the I think it's 5 miles-ish of the lane. So if you would hope that the people who are not stopping use that lane, and then it frees up the other 2 lanes so that you're coming, if your destination is 241, you probably don't get in the 3rd lane.
We allow town sometimes. Don't plan that well.
Yeah.
Go past Idaho Springs, thinking we were going to stop, but because of that crossover, there's no way of putting in an over. Okay, it's a little bridge.
Oh, like a flyover?
Yeah.
there wouldn't really be space. It'd be hard to get it, you know, because you can't really widen the tunnel, right?
Right.
And in that distance to have a whole nother lane starting to do it on it. That'd be significant.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I have a quick question. Do innovations need to be determined before the grant application? Or,
No,
okay,
no. So, you know, I think for the most part, you know, the innovations are more kind of just refinements. You know, it's nothing major that I think is going to change that would affect that in any way. And I mean, really, part of our thing for innovations is we want to make sure that we can get the project done for the current budget as well. And so, so no.
Sorry. Evidently, there's been no discussion at all ever for putting a monorail in.
No, it's not a monorail, but
Well, I mean,
it's called an advanced guideway system, which is higher speed than a monorail.
okay.
And that has been discussed and it is included as part of the preferred alternative for the entire mountain corridor. It's about a $20 billion system, and we don't currently have. We don't currently have that kind of money. But it is still definitely both in the preferred alternative and a critical component of it as well, because part of the serving of the travel demand, as all of you know, is that more people want to go to the mountains than there will ever be lanes to provide.
Right.
So that was one of the key components of the alternative, was that you had to have some sort of ability to provide travel to the mountains through something else than your personal car.
Okay, so even with this improvement of these spaces.
Yes, and there's,
We're not precluding.
and this was one of them that there were a few bottleneck areas that were identified for specific highway improvements that aren't triggered by a transit alternative. So this is one of those, because it had some really significant safety and mobility issues in this particular section between Floyd Hill and Idaho Springs. That was part of what were like the early highway projects. Vail Pass is another one that has some of the, just again, smaller sections of highway improvements that are not really 3-lane, not really fully adding capacity, but just addressing some very specific highway issues. This is one of those projects. All of those projects have to be completed before any additional highway capacity would be added.
Right.
And then the advanced guideway at some point is going to have to be.
I probably wouldn't see that, but are there stops planned for that?
Conceptually, yes, there's a feasibility study that basically laid out the alignment, showed where it could go, showed kind of the where stations would be. There would be an Idaho Springs station. The specific planning for that is kind of, it's at a broad, radius level, because we're not down to, citing a specific station.
That's pretty far off.
Yeah. But a lot of the things that we're doing, and this is kind of another component of the alternatives in the mountains, is really trying to change behaviors and to try and support transit. So one of the small pieces that we're doing as part of this project is the smaller buses that CDOT is able to use. They're calling them Pegasus, but they're similar to Mustang, but they're just smaller vans. Those can travel in the peak period lanes. So we're going to be able to at least start to show people that transit is an option for traveling in the mountains. So that's one of the the ways that transit is supported. There's some park and rides, there's some other things that are starting to try and build that in advance of the advanced guideway system, but the dollar gap there is more significant.
Thank you.
All right, any more questions?
Andy, can you tell us city's involvement in this as far as the technical things?
Sure, and I do want to mention that Councilmember John Curtis is on the Upper Clay Creek, he's representing the Upper Clay Creek Water Association as well as the city on the technical team. So we have been in the past, our city has in the past been active with the I-70 projects and sitting on the various committees and I think that's a really good thing. So the various projects that have occurred over the years, we've been at the table and be able to be aware of what's going on and have input and help shape how things are going and just be informed. So I serve on the project leadership team. John Kane serves on the technical team representing Idaho Springs. And we cover each other if one of us can't attend to make sure that we're involved. And the other thing I might mention is at the end of the packet, the work session packet is a draft letter to Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. And it is offering the city support for that gap in funding, acquiring that gap in funding. So I would like to get direction, if I may, on finalizing that letter for the mayor's signature. They do need it fairly quickly. I think they need it this week. So basically it lays out, basically what was mentioned earlier about the funding gap and just that the city is in support of this request.
Has everybody had a chance to read that letter?
Mhm.
Is everybody all right with the language of that letter?
I just would strongly encourage that the noise wall is featured in the letter, that would be something that if the residents want it, it would definitely be something that we should push for as much as possible.
With the encouragement of the noise wall? Everybody all right with that? Okay. We'll move forward with that. Thanks. Any more questions? I would ask, does anyone need to use the restroom before we move to the regular city council session?
I suggest we just take a few minute break and we can reconfigure the room and.
You got it. All right. We'll see you back there that time. Thank you. Thanks, Heather.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much.
For coming, particularly in person. It's nice
Yeah,
to be
right.
back in person.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe it's right here.
Yeah. No, you have to smell.
Like summer, is you summer look?
Yeah, I cut them off.
Cut every single one?
Right.
I totally bumped on my own, like I just, that's all one wonder email, did not see the other one.
Mine got too much here. I have no idea what's going on, but yeah, it's like that, and it's totally.
I know, so I know.
Do you mind if I'm here?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, I'm almost good.
They are.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm
For keeping me straight.
I don't care, but we need one more sheriff for a lawyer, where's the library?
You just can't even get your damn yard done at this point.
That's the city. It's very clear. It's the city.
I think you can ask that for.
I know, I, that is what we believe, but because it's like this now very sensitive. I mean, I don't want to use the word, but you know, we've got to be oversensitive to like people that are.
So first one, second one.
You know what I'm saying though, right? Like, so we don't want to make them feel that we want to offer him some services like.
No, that's what he said, error. Is it one
Shower. And you
No,
could
I like
probably even get,
color code
you
them.
could probably even get.
I'm
some
sorry if you thought I was
coupons
like.
for-
No, no, but.
Washes.
No, no,
We
no,
don't
no,
have
no,
that
I didn't.
as
think
our,
it
in
was
our building, so I was just wondering if you guys did. Maybe if somebody could get them from the resource center so that we could have them, it's not like 100,
But
it's
you
one
said
guy,
that I was
right
like,
now it's just one guy.
oh, I was home.
Sometimes it's more than one guy, Then it's a lot. Then that's a lot.
Sorry. I think that's a great idea.
Could you, is it possible, could you reach out to the research
I was all in my
person and see if we can get a couple, something to help them out?
I was all in my email
I don't know
today,
if
I just.
yeah.
Oh,
I think they do something like that. They used to in the past.
And look, how nice.
That's true, they might-
It's not all good.
Because we've got many.
I need nothing.
Yeah.
Of
You have the power.
I used to get a.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, so you got to move in, I got to move up
We
and
gotta wait
down.
for around this guy.
Actually,
I've had my conversation with her.
I don't mind it, I mean. I like it. Except I was off last week.
Okay, yeah, I have one in there. Yeah.
I'm waiting for you guys to get in. Art.
No, it's okay. I'm trying to train myself to use my notes on my computer.
No. We haven't got mine yet. Yeah, they used to schools candy.
That was, Maryland.
Like they're-
Yeah.
Private schools.
Little mouse got in there.
I was like, I'm not getting anything out of that drawer ever again.
Oh, my head.
Thanks for opening that door, Andy.
Sure.
It's very
Yeah.
easy.
See, we'll get the swamp cooler on, it's always the, you know, you never know what's the best time to turn it on.
Whenever, you can turn it on anytime for me.
Might still, snow.
I hope so. That'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
my pencils won't work, so.
You see where mine are, like.
Jimmy is not gonna make it. He is on his way to the hospital for his father.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I know, he's had a
Stuff
rough,
in the first.
he's had a rough time. Yeah, so he just texted.
Okay, because it's weird, I can get into my note, one of my OneNotes when I open the email. So I'm like, oh, okay, it's the same password, it is not the same. Microsoft. has the right-
Jonathan, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular session of the Idaho Springs City Council, May 9th, 2022, called to order at 7:12. Roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Here.
Kit Collier.
Here.
John Curtis.
Here.
Art Cacavelli.
Here.
Jim Clark. Lisa Manifold. Here. Scott Pennell. Thank you.
Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. So we have an agenda before us. Do I have a motion?
A motion to approve the agenda for the May 9th, 2022 meeting.
And do I have a second? All right, thank you. All those in favor, please raise your right hand and indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Does anyone tonight feel that they have a conflict of interest? All right, hearing none, I will move on to the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes from April 25th, 2022.
All right, I have a motion, a second,
Second.
and a second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand and indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have before us the bills for through May 9th, 2022. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the bills to May 9th, 2022.
And do I have a second?
A second.
All right, any discussion? Yes.
The bill paid for the Indian Hot Springs was the change name.
Thank you, Wonder. Yes, I think
1,000.
it's on on page 6. The 20,000 Indian Hot Springs. We identified it as Indian Hot Springs, but in actuality, it's HWA Inc.
Shout out if somebody finds that. I thought I wanted, oh yeah,
It is
it's
on
page 6.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make that, that clarification and make sure everybody understands all right with that. And that was at their request, Indian Hot Springs request. All right, anything further? Roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon,
Yes.
Kate Collier,
Yes.
John Curtis,
Yes.
Art Cacavelli,
Yes.
Lisa Manifold,
Yes.
Jim Clark, Scott Pennell. Thank you.
All right. And do we have any public comment tonight?
No, Mayor, we do not.
All right. No. Well, we are going to have a public hearing. This hearing will come to order. This is a public hearing before City Council of Idaho Springs to take testimony for consideration to approve ordinance number 3, series 2022, an ordinance granting a conditional use to permit a river rafting use on property known as 1743 Minor Street, Idaho Springs, Colorado, with conditions. The order of this public hearing will be as followed. First, we will hear from the city. Second, we will hear from the applicant and public comment or testimony afterward. This hearing is now declared open at 7:16. May I please hear from the city?
All right, thank you very much, Mayor. Before you this evening is a recommendation from Planning Commission and then the first reading of an ordinance. So the Planning Commission heard the request for the conditional use permit at its last 2 meetings. The petitioner is proposing to locate a rafting company just next door at 1743 Minor Street. And they have provided a site plan and a number of other documents. One of the documents is a lease for some parking space because it's a little tight over there, and to park trailers and vans. And that lease is behind Eric's Asian Cafe, which is being proposed. So the Planning Commission did review the case. They had some reservations. However, they did recommend approval of it 5-0 and with 5 conditions. And those conditions are no rafts, boats, inflatables, patrons or employees of any rafting operation shall be allowed to enter or exit Clear Creek at this location. The main purpose behind that was, we've been trying to do some digging into that and see why, but that was a requirement for the one across the creek. So you're trying to be equitable and have the same standards. Number 2, no housing, camping, or overnight residential use related to the rafting operation of any type may occur on the property. This restriction does not apply to the lower level of the building on the property that already contains a residential unit. So of course, there's a resident there. We're not looking to displace them. It's more a function of not having a lot of potential other guys or something living in one location there. 3, all loading and unloading of rafts, vans, patrons, etc. for any rafting operation shall occur completely within the property and not on Minor Street. There'll be no backing onto Minor Street by rafts, buses, vans, or patrons. We're trying to keep the circulation of the neighborhood, the flow, especially with Minor Street closed down, the circulation there does get to be a little precarious at times. All storage shall be within the existing building or within the fenced in area. So there is a former garbage enclosure on the site, and the recommendation was for conditions to make sure that everything was located within either that garbage enclosure or the building. And then no buses or vehicles towing trailers be allowed to enter the site. So as I mentioned, so staff had recommended denial of this to Planning Commission based on our concerns with parking and concerns with circulation. The Plan Commission did ultimately vote to approve it, but because they had some reservations, staff did take we took some of their reservations to heart and did have 3 additional recommendations to you for your consideration in regards to this item. One, that the lease that they have provided, even if it's not this lease in the future, but that they always have a lease for these presented to the city for offsite parking so that the vans and the trailers be accommodated in some capacity. That the parking lot be restriped. So there's a couple issues with the current site plan. We're more than happy to work with the petitioner on rectifying those issues. But then once the site plan is finalized, getting it restriped so that it complies then with the code for size of parking spaces, making sure we have enough drive aisle space, etc. And then lastly, that basically an annual review of past operations be conducted to see if we need to clean up anything, status check, things of that nature. That is also something that has been recommended to you this evening. So as I mentioned, the staff still has some reservations about the location. The parking is tight because of existing residential use. There's a bike shop planned also within the building, and that bike shop is a permitted use. That's why it's not covered in this report. And then the rafting use. So the city code looks at parking, and the proposed parking arrangement is it complies with the code. However, through the CUP process, we are able to look at something above and beyond the code. If this was a standard permitted use, we would not be able to look at it from in another perspective. We would have to abide by the strict letter of the code and the minimums. With that, I guess I'd invite the petitioner up for their presentation.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey. Say your name and address for the record. Sure. Faith Costello. 243 Ripley Trail.
Dan Costello. 243 Ripley Trail.
Can you both raise your right hands for me, please? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Thank you.
I guess I'd almost like to start to see if you guys have any questions. And we've done a lot in front of the planning committee. That is true, they haven't heard about it. So the reason that we are moving to this location is so Mile High Rafting has been in business for 22 years now. My husband Dan and his business partner took the business over. This will be their 5th season. It has always been out in Dumont. Shortly after Dan and I were married, which is 2.5 years ago, I won't tell them the whole thing. We went to Cabo San Lucas, and when we went to Cabo, I don't know if any of you guys have been there, people are coming up to you and they're selling you stuff all the time. And if you don't want what they have, you can say, you know, I really don't want to go fishing, but I'd rather go surfing. And they will take you and walk you down to the closest place or whoever they know who does surfing. And so when we started this, actually during the pandemic, that was our whole philosophy, was we are going to give business to other people. You know, if you call us and you want to go ziplining, we will send you to CAT, even though they also do rafting, because we want to make sure that the people who are coming to town know where they can go and what things they can do. And so we really wanted to move into downtown Idaho Springs. Now, that was almost forced upon us because the property was purchased by somebody else and our lease ended. And so we had to look for a place. So we were looking in downtown Idaho Springs, and there's not a lot of places. Danny's been searching for about a year and a half to find some place to run out of. And we finally were able to find a location next door. And our goal was, we don't want to pay rent on a place all year round when we're only running a business that runs for 2.5 months. So we need another business that we can run out of there. And so we are now going to be running Cat Tired e-bike rental company out of there to make up for that space, but we also want to run a rafting company there. So our goal is to add to the community, not to take away the community, and that is why we have done everything we can to try to adapt to what would work best for that location, finding another lease where we can keep the rafts, keep the buses, load all those things, have our employees park, and this will basically just be a check-in and check-out point for our customers. Yeah.
Can I ask, is it too soon for me to
No,
ask?
it's fine. I'm totally good.
So I'm just trying to get a vision of this, because the customers come in or they make reservations online,
Yeah,
one or the other.
absolutely.
If they make reservations online, do they have to come here?
Yes.
Or They do. They have to come here to sign their waivers.
Well, so the waivers are also done online, but we have to make sure the waivers are signed. You know, not everybody does it online. So the process is they come in, yep, you've signed your waiver. No, you need to sign it. Here's the screen, you can sign it. And then we would also gear them up here, and that's where that fenced in area comes in. Fortunately, although it was at one point a place where there were 2 dumpsters, it's actually very clean. So our goal was to put, there's just 2 front gates, but we know that our customers would walk along the side of the building and along the side of the property. And so we're going to put a door or a gate on the other side so they would enter in there, and that's where we would keep all of the wetsuits and everything to gear them up.
So they're gonna gear here and then they're gonna get in their car and go down?
Nope, they're gonna get in a van, one of our vans.
So how many parking spots are we talking, guys? I mean, because this is, you know, that's not a lot, really.
13 parking spots.
Currently there's, on your site plan, there's 12.
There's 12.
So
12, and so how many boats do you guys have going out in a day? Like,
So there are 3 trips a day. We initially had 4 in order to run out of this location and reduce the amount of traffic. We have reduced our amount of trips per day to 3, which also reduces our income. But we knew that that was something that needed to be done, so we'd have fewer people running through. We have
5 boats.
5
5 boats, 4 to a boat, 3 to a boat?
4 to 6 to a boat.
Yeah,
Okay.
4 to 6 to a boat.
Most of the time, people come pretty loaded down, like, because they're coming up from Denver, so we often get cars that are at close to capacity or possibly exceeding capacity. They do, but I think in the plan, what did we count for 3 people per car?
Well, so what had happened is when there's actually, what is it, like it's supposed to be, for a rafting company, you're supposed to have 2 parking per 400 square, or 1 per 400 square feet, which would mean we'd need like 4 parking spots.
I know, but
So yes, so then
it's the volume of the business.
Yeah,
I
the
wouldn't.
planning committee had initially said they figured about 3 parking spaces per trip, or per.
3 people.
I think it would have been
3
more than
people per
that.
car. Thank you,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
3 people per
I
car.
didn't think this.
I was on planning commission for 16 years, so I'm a little bit
You
familiar,
got
and
it.
parking is my
Yeah.
thing, like, that's
Sure.
always gonna be my thing. So my question again is, how many cars do you think are gonna be sitting? Because my fear is the overflow will greatly impact this side of town. And that overflow could be from 12 cars to 24 cars, depending on, I mean, I get it, because you're gonna have 3 boats on the river, that's not really that many. But you're gonna have people staging while other people are on the river, and that's gonna be a problem. So they're coming over, they're getting their stuff, the boats are coming back.
And that has come up. So the parking that we have is based on the highest amount that we could potentially use it for, which is retail. And that was where Jared and I came up with the total of, 8 spaces and then 2 for the residents down below, which really they only need 1. It's a really small space, but
We've also changed our times and
Yes.
spread it out with taking away the 8 a.m. trip. Now the spacing is such that there really isn't going to be any overlap. we're gonna be running, and now, of course, I'm not gonna get this right, but I believe it's 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and
6.
yeah, 6 o'clock.
So 3 votes on the water, 10, 1, and 6.
5 votes on the water.
5 votes, sorry,
Yeah.
but yeah, so 5.
10, 1, and 6. So they're, or, no, it wasn't 2. I think it was actually 10, 2, and 6.
Yeah.
1:30. I don't know.
That doesn't matter, yeah.
The way we had it figured out, it
Yeah, we
seemed like
spread them out. We
there was a
reduced the
half hour
trip.
for people to get out of there, and that still was like when the half hour to get there early, so.
I do appreciate what you guys are trying to do, honestly,
Mhm.
and I don't want to like rain on your parade at all.
Fine.
So I'm just trying to figure it out so that the best possible, plan works for
Yeah.
the city as well. You guys can finish and then I'll
Yeah.
I'll make my statement
Sorry,
too.
I didn't get a chance to. Where are the parking spots right here?
Yeah, and the current spots aren't sprayed according to code, and so that was where we came up with. Jared gave me a survey, I actually measured them out and was able to come up with the 12,
And
which is
so,
what we
but
need there.
you'll have some type of, I'm assuming signage that.
Yep.
People who come back in that want to go downtown need to move their cars.
Yeah, and we also have that, so when they get an email confirmation and then they also get a reminder for their trip, there's a whole bunch of information in there, like what they can wear, what they, and we would include in there that we ask that you leave after,
We could probably have you post your own signs that say
Yeah.
maximum 3-hour parking.
That's a
That you
great
need to
idea.
depart,
Yeah.
would depart when you come back from the
Thank you, I
trip.
was trying to think
I mean, that way you
That's
can
perfect.
enforce it. What's your thoughts on that? You looking at me? What are you looking at?
I know.
Why is he looking at me?
We're talking.
I'm just coming up with the ideas, people. I don't know if they're right or wrong. So, are you, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, the only thing that I've maybe missed, not hit on is, Annie and I are married, our kids run the office, like, this is very much a family-run business. I think it's a little different than a lot of the other rafting companies that are here, and, that's.
Well, I think that you guys are gonna do biking as well. I think that's a great opportunity for you for
Yeah,
full
we're
years,
super
because
excited.
now with the trail, you'd be able to, I think that
Right.
they can go up
Yes,
that trail.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You're gonna show your employees, so they'll park up there and you can show your employees.
Yep, exactly. The employees will park there and shuttle down.
I will say this, Jared, I do appreciate the amendments that you put onto it, and I would say the one thing I really, really wanna, and like, just put out there is that it's a trial run for me, like, honestly, if this really, I don't know how that looks, and you'd have to, is that possible to put that in the contingency, like, if it's not working, what do we do now?
Well, they have to come every year.
I know they have to get
You
reviewed,
know, that's.
but what is our capability of saying, hey, it's not working, because we're
But how
not
do
the
we determine
landlords.
what's not- I mean, to be fair, how do we determine what's not working? If we're just like, the parking makes me crazy, that's not a legitimate. it's
That's
not
what I'm
working.
saying.
Yeah.
That you have to have a criteria for what is not working, if we're gonna have that in the, as one of his amendments.
Yeah, Attorney Gary worked with us to craft the number 3 on the additional staff recommended comments or conditions. And it does talk, say may not take any officials and actions such as revocation of this conditional use approval without complying with all procedures, notices, hearings, et cetera, of chapter 21. So because the conditional use does run with the land, but there are some means, if they are really out of compliance, we can work with them to rectify things and then potentially take another step. So
They
that's
sound
what that
like,
comment
you
is.
guys sound like the kind of people that we can work with. I mean, that's what I'm finding and feeling, again, though, I just don't want this to turn around and bite me in the butt when somebody says, this is absolutely not working for me. You voted for
Where
it.
do you drop your votes?
Well, glad you brought that up. So currently, and we have always, all the companies pretty much, use either Chicago Creek or Upper Dumont. The Upper Dumont section is more of an intermediate advanced trip. Chicago Creek is the beginner section, and then of course Lower Canyon is the advanced section. But so we'll be putting it at Chicago Creek and up at Upper Dumont. However, to accommodate the different amendments, right, or restrictions, whatever they are, to accommodate that, we're going to have to drop trailers and drop people, and there's going to be a lot of back and forth just because of not being allowed to bring trailers in here. So I just wanted to bring this up now because I bring it up whenever I can. You know. One way to really alleviate and help flow, as you're talking about, and take pressure off both Chicago Creek and the park, because the park is going to be a challenge. If you just let us put our boats in right here, that would solve a lot of problems. It would
I
take
think
the
there was
pressure off.
I think there was a fish and game reason why, guys. I was on council when we said no to the other property.
I was gonna ask if.
I think it's not so much us, it's that,
I haven't been able to find that.
Yeah.
I've spoken to
it,
like everybody, the people in charge of the state.
you know, well, I mean, I was on council and I do know that it was discussed, I was on planning commission too, and we said no. And I think it's partially is that even though the riverbed is in Idaho Springs, it's not ours. It's owned by the people that own the river. And so I think there was a lot of restrictions.
It's owned by the landowners, right?
No, never.
Well, but the land under it is.
I don't think the land under it is. The water is owned by the city because it goes through or something like that. Like the using of it is the recreation part. I honestly, guys, it's been a long time since this was a conversation because that's been a while since that was a boating facility. But there was a reason, and I think it had to do with more with the fish people. Whoever those guys are. Trout Unlimited, yeah, those guys.
So as far as income is concerned, as far as the city is concerned, maybe you can answer this better than the folks there. Where do we derive our income from the sales that are taking place here, irrelevant of from where they drop, or from where they drop is where they?
No, from here.
So it would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not the best on that end of the spectrum, but if I'm not mistaken, that it's twofold. One would be sales tax from the site. So for instance, bikes, et cetera, would be a sales tax generator. But then on top of that, there's also a fee per person. And is that anybody who traverses or anybody who puts in the city? I apologize, I'm not
Only
sure
through
on
the
those fine
companies.
details.
Yeah, it's a per head fee that we pay at each location. So we pay to put in at Chicago Creek and we pay to take out at the park.
And then if I may, and please, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you put in here, you would still have to bring the boats back here, which would require a trailer or something. So
no.
that's a concern that
Actually, it would simplify the whole situation because we could run beginner trips down to Kermit's, and then we could take those and run an intermediate trip up out of Dumont, and we could put the boats right here and just take out here. So we're actually eliminating almost half of our transportation.
I don't want to throw like a wrench into your wheel, but Kermit's is for sale. And that would be an awesome spot for a boating spot.
Well, it's not for sale. The business is for sale. For like $350,000. Al Fry.
That would be a nice spot.
I completely. There is not a stone unturned. I'm aware of.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, that's a nice spot.
I want to back up a little bit because I'm with
Certainly.
Kate and the parking is a problem. And please don't think this is me trying to get into your business. It's
Not at all.
actually informed some of my questions. Are you guys buying or leasing the upper space?
We are leasing
You're
it,
leasing, so.
but I have requested an option to purchase.
Okay, because my question is about the tenants below. Like, I didn't see a whole lot about the tenants down there. And
Certainly.
having lived in towns like this where I live in transition housing with a lot of transitional business, I think it's good if you're trying to buy it or even just trying to lease it, because I would probably turn that into storage or whatever you need. How are you going to maintain protecting the tenant's parking space?
We'll have a spot for them with the sign that's resident parking only. It's in our lease, and we've talked to her. She's really excited about it all. We're also gonna put up a chain across her like walkway so that people aren't going down there. Cause I mean, even just yesterday, actually, I walked by and there are people just, cause she's not there on weekends, like hanging out. I'm like,
Yeah.
Well, no, I actually, and then my other question is, I would like to know, because initially when I read this, I was like, oh, I don't want them putting in right there. And then I thought, well, wait a minute, why wouldn't we put in there? Because that would actually take care of it, because if you can't bring a trailer in the lot, my question is, how do you get the boats back and forth? Because that's like, there's a lot, like, to me, I see a lot of moving parts here.
If you allowed us to put in there, I would purchase a flatbed truck, pickup truck just with a flatbed instead of a regular bed. And I think that I could move whatever additional wraps in and out we need to do that.
Is feasible to put in there?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great spot. The way the river bends, actually, it would be easier than Chicago Creek and definitely easier than, we call it Stealth, but it's at the other end. The Greenway is now taking it over it. So we used to put in right at that. It was a
At the
horrible-
23rd Street Bridge, is that what you're talking about? Or past that?
Maybe, it's called Whitewater Drive. It's right by
Oh,
the,
yeah,
the,
the propane company.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, it's straight down and rocky and horrible. And we tell everybody 90% of all injuries occur on land, like right before the descent. So but anyway, this would be a lot easier. Yeah, sorry.
Do you truly believe that will alleviate some of the issues that have come up as far as?
Definitely, it'll help at Chicago Creek in July too, just with all the other companies. Like if we weren't there, you know.
That's where I was looking, like, if it takes them away from the park more and more of our public areas. But, you know, for me, I would have to see some, how are you gonna improve this, how are you gonna make this look good? That's hard to do if you're leasing, like, 'cause then you gotta wrangle with the landlord.
Certainly. Well, Santiago seems to be in favor of whatever we need to do over there, in terms of like, we could definitely cut some steps into the side of the river to just make it easier, you know. I mean, I think all that's really on the
This is
table.
an off question, but
Yes, sir.
you're talking about putting the business in there. Did you ever look at the prior's bike books and how he did with his bike business?
I'm sorry, that's.
At his
I'm
book?
not asking what it is.
Oh, Santiago, no, we haven't seen anything.
So you don't know what to buy.
It's a totally different story.
We've done our own business plan.
Yeah.
Well, going with that, Martha, do you think that the fact that we have a bike park now is gonna make a difference in that?
I think it would be huge myself.
You have to be open to make money, by the way.
Yeah.
That's always helpful.
Oh.
Just saying. I think that my opinion is, I think this is a really tough one. But I asked Andy, would you want to look into that
We can research the history of it.
before we
because
make a vote on
It's
it?
a little unclear what the history of that, whether it's a local
Reason?
requirement or whether there's some other requirements that drove that decision.
Because before I make a decision, if you had the option to put in there, I think it would take one big loop. My husband and I vote too, and I hate every part of putting it in and taking it out. Everything else is fine, but I hate it and it takes forever. And there's never a good way to do this. So that's what my impression, it's gonna be difficult here. But if we could figure out what the reason is, can you guys, I know it's boating season and you guys probably wanna get going. How, can you wait
Maybe a week
for?
or 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, so,
Yeah.
The second reading of the ordinance would come back in 2 weeks.
Okay.
anyway.
Yeah, well, I don't want to move to approve or deny based on a research, you know what I mean? I would rather move the table and then that would put it, still put it back 2 weeks either way. It's gonna be a month out. Month, maybe 5 weeks out. I know, but this is not gonna be the biggest boating season anyway. But what's your thoughts?
Jared, do you or Carmen have any further information on this, or would we need to do more research? on
We'd
it?
have to do more. I've been looking through some documents. I haven't found, I just know that the neighbors were not allowed to do it. So we were looking at it from an equity
Are they still
perspective.
here?
That's what I was just. gonna
Why don't
ask
we
you.
ask them? What is, oh,
There is, from the limited knowledge I have, there was a rafting company that was there. They had moved out, but since it's a conditional use permit, so it runs with the land. So another company or either the same company came back or another company is located there just a year or so.
I'm wondering if they remember the reason why they weren't allowed to put in there and they don't know.
It's a different
people.
company, I
Okay.
can tell you that.
they
yeah.
used to put in like that, you can see where they built the rocks and did the thing, like the guys on the other side definitely used to.
But he can put in, I think the difference is that if you're on your own and you have your own boat, you can drop in there, right? It's your property.
Commercial trip is different.
It's commercial. It's all just because it was
Sure.
commercial. That's, again, I'm old and my brain is not working as well.
Yeah, but I mean, the commercial company that used to work there did put in there. Like, that's fact, yeah.
Yeah, they might have, but they weren't supposed to, that's for sure. Yeah.
That may also be true.
You know how it is.
And so we certainly have local land use law that we are able to exercise if we so choose to add that condition. If there isn't anything else yeah, underlying, that would restrict that. You know, that condition can be removed, but then I would imagine that we might have a similar scenario with a request for an amended CUP. next
Exactly.
door.
And that also is a problem,
Oh.
right?
And
Is it a
then I
problem, or
think
is
we
it-
have Carmen on, Carmen might have a comment.
Oh,
I did speak with Dale at Clear Creek Rafting and they have like no issues. Right, they're still within the city, but as far as like the county, the state, they have several eddies that they've created there that they use every day. They've been using them for 20 years and there's no, it's a non-issue. I am aware that if we were able to purchase this, there's something called a nationwide 18 permit. That is what they use. It allows for 25 cubic yards of something to be put into the river, probably rock. That's what Dale and Clear Creek use to create their eddies. So I'm just saying that is path forward, should you guys be comfortable with that. But I checked and I'm not aware of anything countywide or statewide that would prohibit us from using that.
I think that what Jared was bringing up, which I think is valid, is that if this one goes through, then the flip side of the river will go through, and then we still have the parking issues and the trucks and the trailer issues downtown.
Ron?
Council, oops, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I was just gonna say that, like, in terms of taking pressure off the two, put-ins, then if Captain Ron was not forced into that, that would really make it all smoother.
Well, yeah, because what we mentioned at the planning committee was that, at Chicago Creek, it gets crazy. Like there's lines of buses.
You can wait an hour to put your boat
And AVA stacks their boats and leaves them there, and it gets pretty crazy down there, and same,
It's
at the
gonna be
park,
worse
like
at
I
the park,
get that
yeah.
it's an issue.
I know, I
because
live
there's
there.
so
It is bad.
many-
Yeah, I agree.
so-
No more of the park for anybody. The way they
So-
tear it up.
Yeah, I swear, we
us
won't
being
step
able
foot in the
to-
park if you let us.
Exactly. If we can do it there, then we're out of the park.
I'm
and
sure
then
Ron
so
won't
is
step foot in
Ron,
there
you
too.
know?
So what we want to do is see if they can put in here,
That's what,
that would be best for them.
would we be good though if the other company
That's-
says,
Well,
that's-
what would that cause, why would that cause a problem?
when you're putting on a small river, both sides of the river are putting in, which is
But
fine. The
they
river
can
people are
alternate
good.
times, and that would be
Right,
make that-
Doesn't
but it's
cause a
just the
problem.
traffic in downtown again.
Where now?
Right here, this is downtown. This is downtown.
This is- let's not talk about it.
It's a block away, Dar. I think it's
That's
downtown.
what, the point is, it will alleviate the traffic.
well, I would
They're doing
still,
it, that's their point.
oh, did we have a Carmen?
I think Carmen wants to say
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, Carmen, hello.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to add, I similarly, similar to Kate, I can't remember the particular reason why the other adjacent property, why that condition about put-ins and put-outs was imposed. I will reiterate the point that Jared made. We've talked about this as staff. There is plentiful land use authority, mayor and council, for you to limit what can occur on the property under this CUP, and that includes use of the property to embark and disembark. So certainly there is authority, again, from a land use perspective, how will traffic circulation work if put-ins and takeouts are done there? So it's certainly a restriction that can be imposed. And we as staff, again, sort of rolled with what had historically been done in the interest of equity and pursuant to the authority that you have. Council, if you wish us to further research as staff, whether you can indeed green light the embarking and disembarking there on that property, we're happy to do that. As Jared mentioned, and to Art's question, we may then face a question from the other authorized CUP. Well, hey, why is that fair? We're literally neighbors. Why is that a fair condition for them and not for us? And that's fine. Council policy choices evolve, councils change. You can make decisions that prior councils did not, and all of that is okay if there's justification for that. So whatever you wish to do, if you want to keep that restriction and approve it tonight, that's fine. If you want us as staff to further look into and verify your ability to take that condition away and kick this another 2 weeks down the road, that's fine too. Those are all valid choices for you.
So Carmen, can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
So if we did, all hypothetical, but if we did decide that we were gonna look into, have the staff look into land use on that property and the other property came in, we could still say yes in good faith and say, look, we wanted, this is kind of a trial period of these properties being used as boating companies. Is that something that we can do and still kind of protect ourselves if it doesn't work out?
Like give it a year?
Correct. Correct. Yes.
Hey, okay. Kick it down the road,
Let
baby.
me ask you guys a question. If for some reason it takes 4 weeks, is there any way you would start your business the way you were talking?
Oh, yeah, we would just operate
And
as.
then
The other way.
and then adapt to this.
Yeah.
Okay, so we wouldn't hurt your income.
So you
Jared?
would even
No,
in a
no.
year make this concession?
Jared, if I may also, we,
We'll do it on
because of the, because of the coda and the liquor licenses, we do have an extra meeting on the 31st. So we would have a little shorter condensed timeline if we did need to go into a third meeting.
How do you feel about it,
So I
Jerry?
just wanted to throw that out, that it wouldn't be as long of a time frame potentially.
Yeah, but how do you feel about doing this? What's your thoughts on this?
You know, in my experience, there's typically another entity that controls water access.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I could be completely wrong on that. I am, still a little apprehensive about parking, about, shoveling things in and out with rafts and a number of other things. That's ultimately where my mind goes, is that it does get pretty congested. We do have a number of residential, units down the street, not too awful far. And we just want to make sure that there's the least amount of impact as possible on those residential.
I agree 100%. You appreciate it. And I think that having a trial period and maybe investigating a little bit more, I think it's a good idea.
I would ask the applicant, because it's pretty apparent to me that I know at least council would like to get to the bottom of this as far as putting in and taking out. And I want to ask you, because I don't want to do something that hurts you, but it certainly sounds like to me that you're of the opinion that it will greatly alleviate some of the congestion that we have right now on the creek.
Yeah.
So if we were to table this evening, and, we may not have a second reading of this for a month, would that be your preference?
No, let's do it right now. To his point, I'm paying for access to this river. I pay for a permit on the Clear Creek, as I do on the Arkansas. If the Arkansas could be kind of a template, I know that if you have land on the Arkansas, you can put in and take out there. It's private land.
Commercially?
We are using the Pink House, which I'm not gonna remember the lady's name, but it is private. We lease it as an organization from her for like $40,000 a year just to put our boats out there. And that they are looking at several other locations as well that we would just purchase that could like do what the Pink House does, but it's all just strictly like access. If you own the property and you can legally like go over there, then you're good to go. Otherwise, it's just really an issue of permitting. So
You guys use the park now?
yes.
Okay, so this would alleviate
3 boats,
5
15 boats a day.
15 boats a day from the park.
Doesn't mean that someone's not gonna fill that gap, which is.
Oh, no,
really clear
no,
about that.
girl. I live there too.
Yeah, we all- There's a lot of people, so does Chuck, there's a lot of people in council that live in that neighborhood.
By no means professional, but I am a real estate agent. I do specialize in land and ranch properties. So studying water rights and things like that is actually a thing for me. And so I'm not saying that I'm telling you guys anything professional. I'm an attorney.
That's how we got her.
Right, that's
She's
why
got
you
it,
have
yeah,
her,
yeah.
she's the one. But what Dan was saying, I think he kind of got for me, is that when you own property, you own the land underneath the water to halfway through. right? And then the water is always owned by the state of Colorado. And so he's right in that if anyone owns property and wants to let rafts in there, they can, but this is a commercial property. So I understand that we can impose, you guys can, impose kind of whatever you want to on that property because it's not our residential property. It's not our own boats going in.
But it's also
And-
change of use, and that's kind of what the big deal is. It's like, it's an entirely different thing that's ever happened there before.
Right,
So that's a big
exactly.
concern.
But I mean, we're not that far from the park, and the park is crazy, and that is where everyone is taking out. I'm sure you guys live there, you see the stacks of boats, you see the buses, and we are a small company, so, it's, the impact is still going to be there. There's not a company that doesn't take in or put, or
Right, because our boss
or
are.
take out there. That's just the
course.
same with Chicago Creek. That's why it's so crazy. So, yeah.
Safety is number one. When you
Yes.
talk about putting steps and changing the landscape there, are you gonna have to work with Corps of Engineers
Well,
in the floodplain
That's
to
what
do
they're-
that?
I will tell you this, that if you go down there, it's probably one of the safest put-ins and takeouts that there
Yeah,
are on the
but
creek
you'll
right
be
now.
changing the
Well,
bank,
only
and
if
that's
we felt like we
Corps of
needed to put
Engineers.
extra steps in, because
that's
if
where-
that's an additional permit, we will, but we, as far as the other takeouts and put-ins, it's actually safer right now as it is. But yes, if that was something you would have definitely.
Yeah, Councilor Curtis is correct. Typically, anything on the banks that gets changed would have to have a Corps permit, a Corps of Engineers permit. So, that would, I'm not saying that you can't potentially walk down there at its current condition. I'm just stating that if you do end up with stairs or something, you better check with the Corps first.
Certainly, certainly. And that is a Army Corps of Engineering permit I was talking about, the nationwide
Is the
18 permit.
nationwide.
Yeah, so I'm familiar with all that. But I'm not even, I think if we just cleared the brush out, I think people would be able to snake down there without really too much of an issue, so. And there's already a slide going down there that we could lower boats down, if need be, so.
So you still have the problem with the boats coming back, right? Trailers and boats coming back, so that's,
Well, no, because we'll just float them down the river to here.
you're gonna float it from Chicago Creek down here?
No, from Upper Dumont. The intermediate stretch will run. Instead of taking out the park, we'll just take out here. And we'll leave our boats right down there.
Okay, so what is this put in for?
Well, we'll also put in here with the boats that we're leaving down there. from
And then
that-
take them out?
So the advanced trip will float down.
So the boats will
And then
never
they'll
take
get
out
out,
here?
and then the people will go down, and get on those boats and do the beginner stretch.
All right, so the boats will never take out here?
Well, they'll take out, but
And
they
put
won't
in.
go anywhere. We'll just
Oh,
set
Oh,
them.
yeah, they're gonna be on the shore.
Yeah, we're not
I mean,
gonna like load them up or anything.
Yeah. Okay, that's all.
Exactly.
Is
That's
there
what I was
enough room? Because I went and looked at that before I came in tonight, and I was surprised, like, there's her little yard of the resident down below.
Mhm.
Is there more room down there? Because I'm like, wow, that's smaller than I thought.
The property kind of goes at an angle that
Okay.
way.
So, yeah, what we're actually talking about is on this side, like right by the screened area.
Where the dumpsters were.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. So the boats would probably, if we were putting more in there, as I mentioned, with like a flatbed truck pickup, like small pickup, micro pickup.
You do know your neighbors with us are gonna see it all.
Oh, I know, I know. Well, except everything below the riverbank, it's where we're gonna keep it.
You just gave it away, my man.
Mayor and council, if you do wish, just procedurally, if you do wish for more research from staff or any more input from applicant or anyone on this topic of authority to put in and put out there and who can say what, you would, I think, need to do two things tonight procedurally. One is to continue the public hearing to an additional date so that on that date, this hearing would still be open and you could still accept that additional evidence and get it on the record. And then two, I would suggest that you go ahead and approve and adopt the ordinance on first reading, right? No need to delay two readings of the ordinance. If there are amendments to be made to the condition on second reading, we can still do that. If you wish to pivot to a denial at the second hearing. You can still do that. First reading is procedurally just one step of this two-step process.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Carmen.
You're welcome, Mayor.
Do we have any more applicant testimony? All right, and John and Wonder, do we have any public testimony or comments?
Mayor, we do not.
Okay. All right, then. I'm going to call the public hearing. Actually, I would like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing to May 23rd. Do I have a second? Roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Jim Clark. Scott Pennell. Thank you.
All right. And I will declare the public hearing closed at 8 I'm sorry, we're going to continue that to May 23rd. And do I have a motion to approve ordinance number 3, series 2022?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 3, series 2022, an ordinance approving a conditional use permit to permit river rafting operations at 1743 Minor Street with conditions, including the conditions put forth by the planning director.
Thank you, Kate. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. Roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
John Curtis. Art Cacavelli.
Yes.
Lisa Manifold.
Yes.
Jim Clark. Scott Pennell. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll see you in a couple weeks for a second reading and a continuation of the hearing. And thank you
very much. I appreciate
And
it.
if you find anything that would be pertinent to our investigation or whatever, you call, would you like to look at it?
Certainly. I mean, if you like, I could probably get something from like people at Colorado State Wildlife. Drawing blanks right now.
I know the
Picture space.
CPW, Colorado Parks and
Yes,
Wildlife.
thank you.
Yeah.
If you know somebody there, I
Sure,
mean,
can they
direct it
get
to
you-
Andy or Jared or John.
Very good. I will do that. Certainly. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you. Have a good night.
You as well.
Next on the agenda, City Attorney, Carmen, do you have anything else for us?
No, nice job. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you for your info.
Thank you, Carmen.
You bet.
Andy, City Administrator.
Mayor and Council, you have my report with no request for action.
All right. Jonathan.
Mayor and Council, I did not submit a staff report, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions for Jonathan? All right. Moving on to Deputy City Clerk.
Mayor and Council, you have my staff report in front of you with no requests for action.
Okay. And Community Development Planner.
Absolutely, City Council, my monthly report is in front of you. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
I noticed in there you spoke with the people who just bought the car wash.
Yes, indeed.
They want to put up some kind of structure. I took a look at it. What do they have? Did they share with you what kind of structure?
Yeah, so currently they're working on some concept plans for a multi-story, multi-tenant residential building. And right now their focus is to try to keep the car wash and then put the residential building behind the car wash.
Right.
So it's a tight site. We're working on some site plan items. There might be some variances that might be coming down the pipeline, so.
They look very big, and how tall can they can go over 35 feet? Right?
It would be maximum of 3-story, you're correct. 3-story, it might be a hair over 35, but it's somewhere right in that
And
ballpark.
they're continuing to run the car wash, is that their initial thought?
That's their proposal at this point.
So if I want to go vacuum at 2 in the morning, they don't care about the residents. It's the first few feet are very steep.
Yes.
Then it's flat. I know, I looked at it. I saw, I'm just.
Which maybe people like the sound of water.
I guess. Well, yeah, people on that side would be great.
On both sides.
Can I ask,
All kinds of
I
water.
don't know if you can tell me this or not, can I ask like how many units they are proposing this residential structure? 1, 5, what?
So I don't want to get too deep into it
No,
because
I
we
know
are
if you can, just.
still working on, concept plans, et cetera, and I don't want to, I typically try to provide a high level because I also don't want to give anything too
Any
much
bias or
to,
anything.
Right.
yeah,
I
also.
don't want to know more than I need to know. Thanks.
So what's the zoning there, right? We have.
Commercial.
It is C2, so
Yeah.
it's our kind of mainline commercial zoning, but there's a provision in the code that does allow for multi-unit residential as long as it's associated with well, no, I take that back. I think you can do it separately in the C2 as well.
I think you can, because that's what the whole East End was developed, so that you can have mixed uses.
Yeah. All right, any more questions for Jared? Well, Chief, thanks for the report. A lot of excitement in that one, especially with the crash.
Right.
Do you have anything else for us tonight?
Just real quick, Mayor, Council, just wanted to make sure and share with the council that former Chief Bob Nowak passed away this last weekend. He had worked at the Idaho Springs Police Department back in 1971 to 1986, as best we can tell. So he'd been struggling for quite a while. So he passed at a hospital this last weekend. So I wanted to share that. I also want to take a minute to thank Mayor and Council and Andy for, my dad passed away pretty recently, and there was a little donation in his name. And so I appreciate everyone's support as my family went through that. So thank you all. And then I also wanted to invite council and remind council that we are having an open house at the police department on May 23rd, Monday, May 23rd, just from 4 to 5 o'clock. So just feel free to stop in at any time. We're going to, I'd like to just show council, the effort that was done, the money that you put towards, a little bit of rehab at the building. And so I just wanted to extend that invitation.
Nate, are we all gonna be able to fit in there?
If everyone comes every 15 or 10 minutes, then we'll be okay. So
We'll have to like
it
stagger.
only
We'll
takes
stagger
10
it.
minutes to walk through.
Hey. Being very, very.
So that's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Chuck, before we move on, I just have a question. I was looking at your report about the same homeless female party. Do you have any other options? I looked at our Quick Creek Resource Center, right over here. I didn't see anything. Is there any other options other than giving her a citation? I mean, will she show up? Will she, if she's not?
So, Mayor, Council, we have been working really closely with the Jefferson Center for Mental Health. Carrie Lindbergh works in the mountains. She comes and rides with the police officer once a week with us and once a week with the Sheriff's Department. And we have done a lot of outreach with this lady.
Okay.
Long before I arrived, and it's just, there's some difficulties.
Okay.
We've certainly extended as many resources as we can, and she's just a little difficult.
Thank you. I just wanted a little more clarification on that.
Right.
Jefferson Center is really great though, when they can help, they do a really great job, but they have to want help too. There's always that, you can't force them into it.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Chief. Public Works, John Bardoni.
Mayor and council, you have my staff report with no request back.
All right. Hey, though, the sales tax was looking pretty darn good too. We're up over 100 grand from last year. We saw that in there.
Yes.
All right, then the last thing I have is a Public Works proclamation. Oh. This proclamation is recognizing Public Works May 15th through May 21st, 2022. Whereas public work services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives. And whereas the support of an understanding and informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public work systems and programs such as water, sewer, street lights and highways, public buildings, and snow removal. And whereas the health, safety, and comfort of this community greatly depend on these facilities and services. And whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, are vitally dependent upon the efforts and skills of public works officials. And whereas the efficiency of the qualified and dedicated personnel who staff public works departments is material influenced by the community's knowledge and understanding of the importance of the work they perform. And now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Idaho Springs, State of Colorado, urges our citizens to acquaint themselves with what is involved in providing our public works services and to recognize the contributions which public works staff members make every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. In witness thereof, I hereunto set my hand on behalf of the City Council and cause to be affixed the official seal of Idaho Springs, Colorado, this 9th day of May, 2022.
Thank you, Mayor.
And thank you, John and staff. Can't thank you enough.
You want that to go to John, or is that need to go to?
Does that go back to you, Wonder?
It goes back to me.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Okay,
Yeah, that was a great note to end on, I have to say. Before we go, does anyone have anything else that they'd like to bring up? All right, I'll call meeting adjourned. Oh, sorry.
Right now, we're not planning to have a work session next Monday. You like to have a little advance notice on that. Right now, it looks like we will have a work session on the 23rd before the regular meeting.
Okay.
And of course, don't forget the open house, 4 o'clock.
Oh, yes, on the 23rd, yeah.
But we'll have a little break there before we go into the work session.
Okay, sounds real good.
And I would like to just remind everybody of the retirement party this Thursday from 5 to 9 at Blackstone Rivers Ranch.
And Wonder, would you also refresh everybody's memory on, like, even if you didn't buy the meal, you're still welcome to come, it's open bar?
Yes, and not open bar, but cash bar, yes, yes.
That's right.
It's time to get it
It's a cash bar.
It's from 5 to 9 at Blackstone Rivers Ranch, and anybody is more than welcome to come. Yeah, the RSVP was for dinner, so if you didn't make that, that's fine, but it is open and there is a cash bar and there will be live music and a DJ.
And the cash bar, for those who do not buy dinner, is from 7 till 9, right?
I think, I'm not 100% sure. I think that they would be willing to accept money at any time frame. So I think that anytime you can come by a cocktail.
There are a few people who've responded that they can't make a dinner, but they could come early, like at 5 to 6. Dinner will be around 6. So we don't want to discourage anybody to come. I think we'll still be able to accommodate
that. Jonathan.
I just wanted to remind everybody as well that on the 21st, we're gonna have citywide cleanup. The dumpsters are gonna be in the park, and we're gonna hopefully have volunteers come and help clean the town like we normally do, but we'll be taking items, not, general household trash and not large items or hazardous waste, but we will have that available in the park that day. Also that day, we're planning on having the horseshoe pits open and horseshoes available, and also V Camp, the trail will be, that's its official soft opening date. So that trail will be open, and we're gonna try to see if we can get some people to go check it out.
Nice.
do you have a dedicated idea of where people can rent horseshoes, borrow horseshoes? No, I've done one.
We have 2 sets at City Hall. My plan was to talk to the visitor center and see if they'd be willing to check those out.
I've had that
But,
question.
yeah, Andy and I will also be in the park on that morning, so we might be able to have them there as well. So I will follow up with you on the location of the horseshoes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything more? Yes, John.
Mayor, just a reminder also, the cemetery cleanup is Wednesday, May 18th from 9 to noon.
All right.
They're having hot dogs and chips.
All right, anything else? I want to thank everybody, and we'll call it adjourned at 8:13.